Morning, warriors, and welcome to Why Shy Why. If you've been tuning in over the last few weeks, you will notice that I'm talking specifically about one of my areas of love, which is Agile or Scrum methodology. Today, I wanted to delve into something called the retrospective. This is really, really key, guys. A lot of people, almost 20%, sorry, 80% of people do not do who say they are running in Agile or Scrum mode do not do retrospectives. And for me, it's like a cardinal sin because the whole reason of retrospectives is for learning, and for me, learning is the most important part for a Scrum team. Okay, so today we talk about retro. Okay, so let's get into retros. Retros are really, really easy things to understand. Basically, what we're doing here is that we are looking back over the sprint that we've just finished. So retros happen at the end of a sprint. Say it's a 2-week sprint. We're looking back for the last 2 weeks and trying to answer a few questions. The key question to answer is what worked well, right? What did we do that made things run smoothly, right? Or above and beyond smoothly. Now, there's a bit of a lesson here. I used to have a person on my team, a very old school developer, really awesome dude, but he would never give himself any credit, right? And so when things worked smoothly, that was his status quo. Things did not work well, Shy. They just worked as they were meant to work. Now, in a retrospective, if something worked well, or it just worked to plan, that worked well, okay? Because software is so complex, software has so many different options, so many things could go horribly wrong, that if something worked to plan, you've actually done a pretty mighty job, okay? So make sure you list those things. As a group, get together, sit in a room, and talk about what worked well. The next thing to talk about, obviously, is what to improve. Because just as you're talking, you'll realize that this thing worked well, but there was this part that we needed to improve. Okay, and this is where you start seeing some of that learning feedback loop happening. And you'll talk to your colleagues, and you might not actually know what worked, what didn't work so well, what you needed to improve. But because you're sharing, you might actually come up with some sort of ingenious, innovative idea to test out in your next sprint, because that starts tomorrow, right? And it only goes for 2 weeks, so it won't be a huge test that you can straight away implement and see if it works. Okay. The next thing to talk about is, well, two things. One is what did we learn, right? As we went through the last fortnight, as we went through each sprint, worked through each user story, what did we learn? Did we learn anything of significance that we'd like to put down on record so we can come back to it when we need to? Usually teams will come up with technical things that they've learned, which is great because that means that they've moved past some of the more conceptual and harder things that are harder to learn, that will happen earlier on in the project. Now, when you get through that, if you notice that you're not learning as much, what should happen is that the Scrum Master should prompt learning through the sprint. Okay, so one of my favorite things is to get one of the people in the team to teach everyone else something about what they're an expert in. Okay, excuse me. So, for example, if you're a front-end developer, and that's your key strength, but next to you in your team is a back-end developer, what would be awesome is for the front-end developer to do a quick presentation, maybe a half hour, an hour, every sprint, sorry, not every sprint, for this sprint particularly, to teach everybody else about front-end development, right? And so that becomes an artificial thing that we learned, but it is moving us towards a multidisciplinary team, which is what Scrum is all about. Everybody in the team should, at least to a certain level, know what everyone else does, okay? Or at least how to tap into that expertise. The last thing, guys, is something that I find of particular interest as a Scrum Master is what still puzzles us. It's a really interesting question because, again, you'll have some developers who say, well, if it puzzles us, then, Google it or whatever it is. But there are other things that actually take a while, right? Sometimes things that are I don't know what's the word, unanswerable come up here. You know, what puzzles us? The bureaucratic nature of the organization we work in, right? That is a legitimate thing that puzzles teams day in and day out, and that's just life. But at least it's now on paper, and we've talked about it as a team, and we can move on from that. But keeping that inside can be relatively hard for a team, and especially if you're going through a trying time where bureaucracy is really cutting through. That's a good forum in the retrospective to just stop and talk about it. All right. So retrospective gives the team an ability to look back and learn from their mistakes and their successes, anything that they've learned, and what continues to be a little bit puzzling. All right. Okay, guys. So that's pretty much it for today. Next week, I want to start talking about something else slightly different. So please tune in and we'll talk again. Until then, stay focused.